Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the new world of COVID-19 and virtual meetings. I'm Myron Knaffel. I chair the SAMA Board of Directors, and this is our 2020 AGM for SAMA, which was originally scheduled for April 9th, earlier this year. I hope I hope today finds all of you healthy and safe from the COVID virus. We have over 200 people attending this meeting virtually today. And just to give you an idea of how this is set up, we have our board of directors all in the room here right now. And we have our executive team with us right here. So we're going to be available for any questions or anything that you want from us later. And then we've got about, like I mentioned, about 200, I believe 22 people coming in online. So thank you everybody for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us today. I'd like to apologize in advance for any technical hiccups that we might have. This is all new for us too. So if there is some hiccups, I hope that you can bear with us and we'll get through it and carry on from there. Just to give you a quick idea of what's going to happen in today's meeting, I'm going to give you a real brief chairman's report to start things off. And then we're going to have a CEO report from Erwin Blank. And in assessment services, Todd Tressland will be doing a rundown on what's going on in that department. And then a financial report from Matthew Ratch. And we've got a section for resolutions, and Erwin's going to be updating you on that. And I'm not just sure, there might be a change to that, but there is an opening there for resolutions. There's also going to be an opportunity for questions and answers. And Erwin will explain the procedure for that and also voting on resolutions if we have any. He'll give you that procedure, the details on that procedure just a little bit later in the meeting. So with that, I think I'll move right into the report from the chair. I'm just gonna, it's somewhat abbreviated because we don't want to drag this meeting out any longer than we have to. I know how everybody just loves sitting in front of a computer screen for hours on end, so we'll try to keep the reports as concise as possible. Of course, 2019 was a successful year in general. We hit our target of over 100,000 inspections again for the second year in a row. And we delivered our maintenance packages to 88% of our clients on time. We got the new SAMAView up and running, and we made some improvements to my SAMA. And we also were busy preparing for the 2021 reval, which is coming up next year, and dealing with the always increasing number of appeals, of course, was another big part of our work here. Overall, the new system implemented over the past 5 years seems to be working very well. But we're not on cruise control just yet. Looking forward, we want to hit the 110,000 inspections this year, even with COVID sort of ruining some of our plans. But we also want to continue to improve our timely deliveries of values. We of course have to put the finishing touches on 2021 reval year, and the values, the way the trends are looking this year for 2021, the values are a little more stable. So we're hoping that that translates into less appeals. However, COVID has come and put their fingers in there, and there's going to put some pressure on us because first of all, you have to remember the values are set up for January 1st of 2019, which was before COVID was even thought of. And also businesses now are really struggling, and we all know that. And they are going to be looking at ways to cut their overhead costs any way they can. So one of them is going to be property taxes. So they're going to be looking at their assessments and having a closer look at that, and which might again bring in some more appeals. So that's some of the things that we have to look forward to this year. We have been looking forward to, and will have to for the coming year. But we'll continue to forge ahead and do the best with the best that we can. So I think that that's about all I need to say. Irwin and Todd, I'm sure will cover everything in a little more detail that we have, that we've been doing this year and that. So I'll turn the floor over to Irwin Blank, then our CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Myron, and welcome to everyone to our first annual SAMA virtual meeting for our 2020 session. Now, I've got a number of upfront slides that I'd like to take the group through here, just to give a few of the ground rules for the annual general meeting. Thank you. All right. In terms of information for the meeting, just so you know, all of you have been muted by default. So it's okay for you folks to talk amongst yourselves, but if you do want to be heard when we get to the question and answer session, if you have a specific question to ask, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom and raise your hand, and our folks who are facilitating the tech side on our end will identify you, and then we'll get our webinar hosts to unmute you so you can ask your questions. There's also what's called a Q&A feature in Zoom, and you'll see the little icon, depending on what kind of a unit you're using it for. It'll be either in the bottom center or right in the bottom if you're using a handheld device of some type, or the top right. But you'll see a group of icons. One of them is the question and answer session. That's a way for you to type in any questions that you have as we go through our presentations. I'll be moving into my CEO update immediately following this. And then right after that, Todd will give the operations update, the assessment services update, and then Matthew will provide the financial update. We would like to hold the questions till after all those presentations are done, and then we'll respond back to any questions we've received at that time, likely in the order that we've received the questions. And our panelists will be reviewing the questions. If we get a series of questions that are essentially the same, they may be grouping some of them, so there'll be some of that happening, but we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have that may come up through any of the presentations after all three presentations are done. Now, if you do have any concerns, any issues, maybe your screen's freezing up, or if you're unable to maybe get the sound properly, you can use the chat function on Zoom in order to connect to our technical people directly to mention any concerns, and they'll follow up with you. You can also email them at I believe it was called webinar or support@webinarsolutions.ca. right on that bottom line of the screen there. So if you're having any issues, use the chat feature to chat in on technical issues, or you can also email to support@webinarsolutions.ca. And I've got this. Okay. All right, so there's three views that you may have. We're using the Zoom platform for the session. And if you've got a standard laptop or a desktop, you're going to get the features that you can use to chat in on, or Q&A, or raising your hand on the bottom center of the screen. If it's a phone, it takes up the whole bottom of the screen. And if you're watching on a tablet, then an iPad or something like that, you'll see it in the top right element of your screen. So again, the question and answer session is the one to use if you have assessment questions that come out. The chat function is the one to use if you're having technical difficulties. And if you do want to speak, raise your hand when we get to the question and answer session, and we will unmute you in the order that the questions are being dealt with, and then you'll have an opportunity to speak directly to any particular issue or ask the question that you want. Now, voting information is set up here, and we've actually had what I think was a fairly sophisticated process of identifying who all the voting members were, and each of you would have received a unique identification and a unique link into this meeting. The people who are registered as voting delegates, if we would have had a resolution, I'll get to that, would have received a copy of the resolution as soon as the mover stood up to move the resolution. And then you would also be asked the question, be able to vote remotely, yay or nay, for any resolution that was brought forward. And we would tabulate those results, and by the end of the meeting, be able to tell you the results of that resolution. And I say if, because just earlier today, we were notified by the rural municipality who had brought forward the one resolution that we had for this meeting, that they wanted to withdraw their resolution from the meeting. So we do not have any resolutions to deal with at this meeting today. Our bylaw calls for the actual jurisdiction that wanted to bring forward the resolution to personally be here or virtually to be here to bring that resolution forward. Although our board had given me authority to read the resolution into the record if the municipality still wanted that done. They chose after rethinking about the resolution that they actually didn't want us to go there, didn't want this resolution to be heard. So we have no resolutions to be dealt with. So the voting feature is something we'll use for some future session. All right, our agenda, as Myron had mentioned earlier, was to start with Myron's annual report and from the board of directors. I do want to mention Myron started on our board back in 2008, and he's been a great contributor since the day he started. He became our board chair when Neil Hardy retired in 2017 and is now into his second term as our SAMA board chair and just doing an exceptional job. Right after this, I'll give my CEO update. I'll turn the floor over to Todd Tressland for the assessment services update. We'll have the review of SAMA's 2019 audited financial statements immediately after that. No resolutions, so we'll skip that part and we'll move right into the questions and answers. So again, as we're speaking, if you have questions, chat or type them in using the Q&A feature on Zoom. All right. So for me, this is, I believe, my 14th SAMA annual meeting as the Chief Executive Officer of SAMA. It's been my privilege to serve the agency as the CEO since 2017. I originally started with the agency back in 1981, so coming on the near side of 40 years with the organization, and it's been a real pleasure for me to be in this role. Today, what I'd like to speak to you about is primarily about 2019. That's what this annual meeting is intended to be about. Having said that, now that we're in October, in the latter part of October already, 2019 does seem like quite a ways away, but we do need to still review what happened in 2019 as part of our legislated obligations for having these annual meetings. So I will start with some of that. Our purpose as an organization, the reason SAMA exists, is to provide a financial foundation for local governments. And that financial foundation provided over it's a $242 billion assessment base, and it provided over $2.1 billion in revenue to fund local governments. Over $1.4 billion of that goes to municipalities, and $735 million goes to the education sector. This funding source represents the major funding source municipalities have to fund all the local services that support your communities and allow you to sustain and maintain your communities. And the revenue source is unfettered in the sense that elected municipal officials have the right to choose where every one of these dollars go. And it allows municipalities to maintain and sustain their autonomy. And we're very proud to be able to be given the responsibility to provide that assessment base for all of our client municipalities and to govern the assessment system for all municipalities in Saskatchewan. The education sector, that $735 million represents close to 40% of the funding for kindergarten to grade 12 education. So it's a very substantial component of what makes our education system a successful one as well within the province. And again, we're very proud to be able to support that through the assessment system that our board of directors is responsible for. Our mission is all about assessments. We are focused on developing and regulating and delivering a cost-effective and stable assessment system that meets the principles that are outlined in our mission statement. When we're establishing policies and reviewing our assessment policies, the question that is asked by our board or our advisory committees who review these policies is what we're doing making assessments more accurate and more up-to-date? Are we following common practices so that people industries looking at Saskatchewan from other provinces are seeing an assessment system that they recognize and realize is not creating a disincentive for investing in Saskatchewan? That's the universality principle. Are we creating policies that are going to make assessments more equitable so all properties of a certain type are following a similar standard in every municipality? And is the policies that we're bringing forward and supporting or modifying going to make the system more understandable or less so? And I can tell you, if we can't check those boxes as administration, when we bring forward new policies to the board and to our advisory committees, those policies often do not get past those tables. Our responsibility as an agency and our board of directors' responsibility is for the overall governance of the assessment system in Saskatchewan. SAMA is responsible for setting the rules and policies and processes that are utilized by every municipality in Saskatchewan, whether they get their assessment services from SAMA or not. And as of today, SAMA does provide assessment services to 759 of the total of 763 municipalities in the province under our assessment services arm. And we're very privileged to be able to do that. The 4 municipalities that provide for their own assessment services are Prince Albert, Saskatoon, Regina, and Swift Current. And we do work very closely with each of those jurisdictions as well, whenever we're doing any policy reviews and reviewing our operational requirements and coordinating major projects like the 4-year revaluations. We're also responsible to maintain a comprehensive database of information and to assure the quality of assessments right from their initially being done between municipalities and within SAMA to when the assessments are being placed on the assessment rolls, where they're audited by our quality assurance division to make sure those assessments are done in compliance with legislation. So it's that end-to-end function. We are responsible for communicating to stakeholders in the government and providing information to them. And we also have taken on as our responsibility the desire and the need for continual innovation. So we continually provide a better and better service to our client municipalities, our local governments in general, and the provincial governments that we serve. Our current strategic directions were established a number of years ago, going back to 2013, when we were in a different place as an organization, more of a place of distress as we saw ourselves internally. And at that time, we recognized that if we were going to move forward to provide services that our clients expect of us and our stakeholders expect of us, we need to first and foremost ensure that we're providing a level of service that gets our stakeholders to the table saying yes for the basic funding that's required to support those functions that we need to follow through on. So our first strategic direction that was set then was to maintain and enhance our stakeholder supported funding model for SAMA. And we developed a business case to get that support those years back, and we do each and every year to continue to ensure that we're on the right track with our stakeholders when we seek the budget for the next year. Our board also challenged us. As regulators, it's easy to fall into the trap of complicating things by layering rule on rule over the years to the point where the system becomes extremely difficult to administer, expensive to administer, not necessarily as productive and certainly not as effective and efficient as it should be. So our board challenged us through these strategic directions, which remain in place today, to always be looking at things that we can simplify and what we can do to streamline our processes to improve our efficiency and our effectiveness. SAMA had adopted the lean business process improvement philosophy back in 2008, and this codified the fact that that wasn't a flash in the pan for us. This is something we wanted to make as part of our basic philosophy, the way we operate, the way we see all of our functions. So we're continually revisiting those processes. The big objective that was set back then and remains in place today was to use a combination of improved valuation models and policy improvements, improved business processes, and new technology together so that we could radically increase the number of properties we could inspect in any given year. And when we started this process, not that many years back, the maximum number of properties we could inspect was about 50,000 between maintenance and general reinspections in any given year. We set the objective at that time to double our production capacity through this strategic direction. And we worked hard to bring in the new technology that moved us into being more of a mobile operation over the next 4 years, so that by 2018, we were positioned to start to deliver on that objective. And as Myron had mentioned, we have had some successful years since then in terms of delivering on the objective, but we continue to look for ways we can move forward to continue to increase that objective. I do want to mention as well that over the last 6 years, since we've been moving forward in this program, leading to the end of 2019, The extra revenue that has been captured through this process adds up to about $150 million per year in additional growth that has been captured through our maintenance and reinspection programs over that 6-year period. Now, the big improvement of this of increasing inspections is to get data that's more up to date and current and accurate. So property owners are paying a fair and equitable amount relative to what's actually on their properties. An ancillary benefit is the fact that taxable assessment, that taxes that were often left on the table before, are being captured through this process as well. So it's a win both on the accuracy and equity and fairness side, and for our municipal clients in terms of the potential for extra revenue gains, or for them to mitigate tax increases they may otherwise have to implement. And we recognized we were bringing forward substantial changes as an organization that would impact our staff in a major way, changing processes that had been in place for decades. And we realized we would need to adopt much stronger and better change management processes, bring in enhanced training and accreditation programs and coaching and mentoring to ensure our staff were given the tools and the capacity to deliver on these audacious commitments that we were making. Our high points from 2019, looking back on that year, we did meet our operational goals for maintenance, inspections, and appeals. We implemented a comprehensive leadership development program. Our board recognized, looking around the executive and management table, that there's a few of us that are getting a little longer in the tooth a couple or 3 years ago, and they were very strong in saying we need to be positioned as an organization so that next level of individuals are given the appropriate training and opportunity to gain experience, so that we can, as people choose to step away into the next adventure following a successful career, that we'll have people in the wings that are able to continue to carry forward successfully in SAMA's executive and management and throughout our staff complement. So as part of delivering on that, we implemented a leadership development program in 2019, and all of our management and executive staff, with the exception of 2 or 3 that had already given indications of upcoming retirements, have been going through that course. We were fortunate in 2019 as well to receive additional funding over and above what we had asked for in our budget from the province that year. And that funding was intended specifically to enhance our capacity to do inspections. And we used the funding to hire additional staff in the regions who were focused on enhancing our inspection capacity. And frankly, we increased our objectives as well as part of that going forward. And by the way, I'll cover this at a high level. Todd will get into some of the details on exactly where we're at and what our objectives are. We also successfully negotiated a 5-year agreement with our in-scope staff. In 2019, we're already into the 3rd year without a contract. We have a really good relationship with all of our professional staff and all of our staff across the organization. But when you go 3 years without a contract, things start to fray around the edges. And we were very fortunate and pleased to be able to negotiate a 5-year term, which takes us to the end of 2021. We also received approval for all of the necessary policies that are required to move forward with our next revaluation, which is coming up next year, the 2021 revaluation. And we successfully implemented the final components of our multi-year technology infrastructure development project. At the beginning of 2019, we implemented SAMA's new website, a mobile-friendly website built on current technology. In March and April and coming into May of the year, we implemented MySAMA for client municipalities. And that actually was a focus of our last annual meeting in April of 2019. And later in 2019, we implemented a brand new version of SAMAView. And I just have a couple of slides to speak to that. I know for the administrators in the group that were part of the meeting yesterday, which I understand was well attended and well received, some of these slides may be a duplicate for you, so I'll pass through them relatively quickly. But I thought with coming up to a revaluation, it's important for all the attendees to understand this application that's available to the public and to all elected officials in municipalities and local governments free of charge. So SAMAView is a GIS-capable online database. It has all of our assessment profile information for every property in every municipality we provide services to. It's intended to provide the public with free access to assessment information so they can look at their assessments, compare their assessments with a neighboring property, and determine if their assessments have been done accurately and equitably relative to other comparable neighbors. The service is available free of charge for all non-commercial users, whereas commercial users, and by the way, that's not people who own commercial buildings, these are users who are utilizing assessment information as part of their business operations. In essence, charging fees and making revenue off of the assessment information as a component of the work they do, such as realtors or fee appraisers and banks and the like. Those folks are asked to pay an annual subscription and a certain amount depending on how many properties they want detailed information on using a credit system. Now, SAMAview is built within the MySAMA framework. And what that allows us to do is everyone who uses SAMAview needs to create a login. And again, there's no charge for it for regular personal use. You can create a login and you can enter into SAMAview through the MySAMA portal. And you can access this either from our main external website or directly at the website address that is on the bottom of the screen. And I understand that copies of this presentation were circulated, so you can refer to that at a later time. The kind of information that's on SAMAview includes summary information for every property, as well as assessment details in what we call our property report. And that's available. Again, summary information, anyone has unlimited access to look at as many properties as they want for summary information. Individual users can use up to 20, can access up to 25 property reports free of charge. So they can look at their property and compare it to neighboring properties. And again, but they have open-ended access to the summary information about all properties. You can use the GIS functions, you can put aerial imagery on there, all of that's available for free, and that all of that use is unlimited for the property owners. So some of the features, the new features in SAMAview, the new version that relative to what the old version was, number one, it's not noted here, but you'll find if you were a user of SAMAview in previous revaluations, you'll find this one is much less clunky, much more intuitive, and a lot faster in terms of the searches and the like. It's a mobile-friendly interface, so you can use your smartphone. It'll right-size itself for that, or if you have a tablet, there's a view that it'll right-size itself for that, or a laptop or desktop. Each of those are fully utilizable with the system. It's got better search capabilities. If you have your geolocation set, it'll zoom in on where you happen to be at that time. For those commercial users, there's online payment processing, and it is secured access for each individual. If you own, let's say, 10 quarter sections of land and you want to make those favorites because you want to look at them on a more regular basis, you can set them up on your dashboard and access it going forward whenever you enter your account on SAMAview. And it also includes access to prior year's assessments, which becomes extremely important in a revaluation year, when property owners now will be able to look at their new assessment for 2021 and compare it against their old assessment from 2020 using the same feature, just from toggling to the previous year to current year, and the details associated with that. So before leaving 2019, I did want to speak about some of the major challenges that we had that year. We started seeing a substantial increase in the number of appeals going to the Court of Appeal. Part of that was for a good reason, and that was because the Sask Municipal Board, which had a very large backlog of appeals, started to really become more efficient and get caught up on some of their appeals. So they were dealing with a lot more appeals at that provincial appeal level. And that opened the door for the potential for more appeals to go to the Court of Appeal level where points of law are challenged, that kind of the last stop for appeals. And so those numbers, those counts did go up for us. Our costs associated with that are increasing, but we're still managing that within our existing budgets and within our existing staff complements. One decision that came through in 2019 was a really major one. It could have had a very severe negative impact on over 140 municipalities that have significant components of oil and gas assessments in them. There was a long-standing interpretation of how we assess tanks at oil and gas well sites. That's that big black tank that you see there. We've assessed them as improvements for decades. And through the appeal processes and that, it had been interpreted that, yes, that's the appropriate approach to use. In 2019, that changed when we had some local board and then a Sask Municipal Board decision go against us on that. It went to the Court of Appeal, and a judge looked at the legislation in the municipal acts and said, yes, in fact, based on the one line that he was reading in the legislation, these tanks could be considered resource production equipment and not improvements. Now, that was a potential $500 million tax loss right from that judgment, because equipment gets a particular downtime allowance that other improvements don't get. And any tanks at battery sites, often they're the only things that we assess at a battery site now, because equipment is supposed to be exempt at these large oil facilities that process oil and natural gas. So it was a huge potential impact. To their credit, the province had been monitoring this, and they recognized the need to keep assessments stable and to clarify the interpretation in legislation. And they passed new regulations in very short order following that court decision that allowed us to continue to use the same processes that we've used in the past and stabilize the assessment base. So certainly kudos to the folks in the Ministry of Government Relations and everyone else involved on the government side for recognizing that issue and moving forward to keep those assessments stable. Now, looking at 2020, this will go down, looking back at it, as the year when COVID-19 hit North America. And for us, it caused us, like most other organizations, to send our staff home in the middle of March on very short notice and work from home for an extended period of time. It wasn't until months later that we started to move back into the office environment. Thankfully, the work we'd done on our technology infrastructure program positioned us so that we could easily, all of our staff already had all they needed to take essentially all the data they needed into the field with them. So taking that home was an easy step. And all of our office staff had already been transferred into laptops and the like before this came into place. So it was a relatively easy transition for us to move our staff from home. And because of that, we've been able to continue to move forward, and we're sustaining the governance objectives that we set in our business plan leading into 2020. We are continuing to move forward to deliver on all of those governance plans and assessment service objectives. We've also commenced a couple of major new projects looking ahead past 2021, the next revaluation. We are now doing a detailed review of the oil and gas well models. We've recognized that it is time for a constructive end-to-end review of how we assess oil and gas wells. Technology has changed so much, it's time for us to get caught up on that. So the folks in technical standards and policy of SAMA is working with stakeholders, both on the municipal government side, the provincial government side, and with the industry reps to relook at our oil and gas model and look at what changes we need to make for 2025, which will be the next revaluation after 2021. We're also doing a look at our agricultural productivity model to bring the productivity ratings more up to date to reflect more current and typical farming practices currently. So we've got the University of Saskatchewan working with some of our researchers in that area. We are continuing to move forward to automate processes. Now we have new systems internally that allow us to automate a lot of repetitive processes that used to be done by hand. And in 2017, as one example, we had some quality issues with the revaluation reports that we delivered. We're now looking to automate those reports to mistake-proof them going forward for 2021. We've implemented a future leaders program where folks who are looking to step up into management can get some training in management and leadership going forward. And we were able to deliver preliminary values to the province by April 1st, which is our legislated requirement. Now, a quick look at the preliminary trends for 2021. What you're seeing here is a chart that compares the current assessments that are in place now with the assessments that will be delivered in 2021, assuming that there's no change to tax policy next year. So an apples to apples comparison, this is what you would see on a province-wide basis. The one line, 1.0, is the line where assessments are not changing. So any number that's less than 1 means the assessments are actually decreasing, by whatever that difference is. And any number above 1 means those assessments on a province-wide average basis will be increasing by that amount. So what we're seeing in 2021 is an average decrease of in the neighborhood of 7% for residential property, essentially a flat market for seasonal overall provincially, and multifamily going down slightly. The agricultural market was strong between 2015 and 2019, which is the range of change that our 2021 numbers will represent. And so it's going up 25%. And you can see the other numbers on the regulated property side. Commercial's going up just over 10% on average, and pipelines and railways and grain elevators are all going up in the neighborhood of 15 to 20%. So the changes are actually a lot less, given this 4 years worth of change that we're talking about here, at least on a provincial basis. Now, individual municipality changes, that they can vary substantially from this up or down, and they will, but this is the overall provincial changes that we're seeing. Now, in terms of the revaluation update, just a couple of points on that. All the policies necessary to implement the revaluation are in place now. The service provider's market analysis, the final touches that are being done on selected properties, primarily in areas where the income approach is applied, is those finishing touches are now being completed, so that by the end of this month, we anticipate that SAMA and the independent jurisdiction should be in a position where they're good to go with the new values. We are in a situation now where we've been circulating values to our client municipalities over the last 2 or 3 months and providing an opportunity for municipal review and feedback. We recognize now coming into the municipal election that that window is probably closed until after the elections, but the information is available for municipal review, and we're open to feedback at any time. And one issue that we're dealing with is provincial tax policy regarding percentages of value is yet to be determined. The folks in government relations were really setting up very well to get an early decision on percentages of value for this cycle. And they were ready to go at late February, early March, and then COVID hit. And they could not get the government's attention in the area of percentages of value and property tax policy decisions. And now with the election called, the earliest we'll expect to see that will be sometime probably later in November. Our challenges related to the revaluation. The 2021 revaluation has a January 1, 2019 valuation base date. That means the information we're using to establish the values is all the market evidence up to January 1, 2019. The assessments are supposed to reflect the value of property as of that date. So any economic impact of COVID-19, which frankly is still playing out through the system and still uncertain, but any economic impact of that on property values will not be reflected in the assessments that are delivered in 2021. So there'll be a communication effort that will be required to make sure that's clear to all property owners. We do anticipate that we will continue to have a high volume of appeals, and we do have as many as 16 outstanding Court of Appeal cases. We actually had a couple of decisions in the last week or two since this was done. So we've got 14 outstanding appeal decisions in SAMA at this point at the Court of Appeal level. And any extended delay in provincial tax policy decisions past November will start to negatively impact our ability to deliver the final assessed values to our client municipalities, which we had hoped to start doing in early January of next year. So those are some challenges that we're looking at now, and we'll try to manage them to the best that we can. Looking ahead past to 2021 and beyond, next year is a revaluation year. We do anticipate when everyone gets a new assessment notice that there's substantial increases in appeals. So we're looking at 3.5 to 4 times the non-revaluation numbers. And I think Todd gets into some more detail on this. We will continue to deliver on all of our operational and governance objectives in 2021 and going forward. We've factored in a higher appeal count. We anticipate actually taking the reviews of the oil and gas model and the ag productivity models to conclusion in 2021. So those folks who are watching that are on our advisory committees can expect to see some reports in 2021 regarding different approaches and ways we can go forward to update and refine our existing models in those areas next year. We will continue to focus on automation and efficiency gains across the organization, and We also are now starting the process of establishing a new 4-year business and financial plan for the 2022 to 2025 period. The Assessment Management Agency Act requires that the agency do that and get that in place and seek the approval of SARM, the Municipalities of Saskatchewan and Government Relations, which we will be doing by June of next year. I want to give you a heads up that we are looking at some changes to the way our requisition formula works. We found that the actual charges that we apply for different types of property don't always reflect where we're putting our efforts currently. So we're going to be looking at ways we can update that in a practical way as part of that plan. Those changes will not go through before 2022, and they will be reviewed by our stakeholders before anything of that nature is implemented. So that takes me to the end of my presentation. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce our Managing Director of Assessment Services, Todd Tressland. He brings 31 years of experience on the job to his position here. You'll find that he's a get it done kind of guy who has a great understanding of the system, a very business-like approach, and a very positive approach that makes him an extremely good leader of our largest individual division in SAMA. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to Todd.
Thank you, Erwin. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today on behalf of the Assessment Services Division to give you an update on our 2019 year. Some of the things I'll cover today are some of the services that the Assessment Services Division provides. I'll go over our accomplishments for 2019 and talk about what we've been up to in 2020 as well. Some of the main services that SAMA provides, or Assessment Services provide, number one would be our annual maintenance program. And that's something we do annually. We get lists from our client municipalities and to keep their physical inventory in their municipalities up to date. ReInspections, that's also something that's very important. That's where we do a general review of all the properties in a municipality to ensure that the physical inventory is up to date, because we want to have the inventories up to date, as Erwin mentioned, for fairness and equity within the municipality. Revaluations are also very important and something we are working on an ongoing basis. We do revaluations in the province every 4 years. We don't just start every 4 years. It's an ongoing process of sales verification, since our assessments are based on sales, and that's the foundation of our assessments. We're always continually working on sales verification, and I'll talk a bit about counts and that of sales in the province in a few more slides. We're doing market analysis, getting ready for the revaluation, and then we have to implement the revaluation. And 2021 is coming up next year, and that'll be our next revaluation. Also, supportive value. Property appeals is something that we spend a lot of time on. We support our assessments, and that could be through either agreements to adjust, which is through the process where an appeal may be launched. We may find an error on a property, and we can fix that error and do an agreement to adjust with the property owner, ourselves, and the municipality to deal with that appeal. There is the option to go to a border revision, and then to the Saskatchewan Municipal Board is the next level of appeal. And ultimately on questions of law, they could go to the Court of Appeal. So those are the four main functions that Assessment Services does in any given year. Some SAMA statistics. As Erwin mentioned, we provide services for 759 municipalities, around 868,000 properties in our jurisdictions. We have 8 regional offices, an industrial unit located in Regina, and a revaluation unit. And of the 163.25 permanent staff at SAMA, there's 118.5 of those staff in our Assessment Services Division. Our regions are located in these jurisdictions: Melfort, the City of Moose Jaw, North Battleford, Regina, Saskatoon, Swift Current, Weyburn, and Yorkton. And we just have a graphic of where the regional boundaries are in each of those cases. I wanted to touch on sales verification, as I mentioned that earlier, and I just wanted to show you some summary statistics. And when we're dealing with revaluations, we're looking at the sales leading up to the base date. So for example, in the 2013 revaluation, we were using sales up to the end of December of 2010. And in that 4-year base period, there were about 202,000 sales that we could review in the province and have a look at to assist with our market analysis. In the 2017 reval, the 4-year period from 2011 to 2014, there were about 215,000 sales in our jurisdiction. So a bit of an increase in that time period. And if you remember back in 2013 or 14, there was a period of growth in the province. So we did see some more sales transactions. Yeah, for the 2021 reval though, however, we saw a bit of a reduction in sales over the 4-year base period. And as we move looking ahead to the 2025 revaluation, and those are the sales that are occurring right now, we're sitting around 75,000 sales as of October 15th. So about 50,000 sales per year is what we're looking at. And what we like to work with is the arm's length transactions. So we need to weed out the non-arm's length sales from the arm's length sales. And we're approximately looking at 15 to 20,000 sales per year that we would verify and then use in our analysis. So as I mentioned, the foundation of our assessment system is sales. So we get the sales weekly from Information Services Corporation, and then our appraisers work through those sales to verify them. Supportive value, as I mentioned, appeals, and that's something that we work on every year. And I just put up some historical counts of appeals. And if you look at the center, the larger bar there, the lighter blue is 2017, the number of appeals we had in our last revaluation year, and that was around 7,200 appeals. And the darker blue bar beside each of those bars is 4 years prior, so the previous reval cycle. So the dark blue bar there is in 2013 beside that one, and we had about 4,300 appeals. And as you can see in the revaluation years, we tend to have higher levels of appeals. And then in years 2, 3, and 4, we have a lower number of appeals. But you can see in that time frame of over to the far right, we saw an increasing trend in appeals from reval to reval cycle. And now as we move through the 2018, 2019, 2000 or 2020 cycles, we're seeing kind of a leveling off of around 2,000 appeals per year. And that seems to be fairly consistent what we've had over the last 3 years. Of course, next year is a revaluation year, so we'll see what that lends to, but we typically see more appeals in our revaluation year because everyone in the province gets an assessment notice on all properties at that time. So interesting to look at the stats and the amount of appeals that we do work on a yearly basis. At the SMB level, there is that second level of appeal after a board of revision makes a decision, and either the appellant could take it to the next level if they're unhappy with the decision, or the respondent as well. And as you can see over time, back in the, about 2010, which would be the far right dark blue box, 2010, 11, and 12, we were dealing with less than 50 SMB appeals in that time frame. Then in the middle there around 2013, which 2017 is the light blue bar, 2013 would be the dark blue bar kind of in the middle. We started seeing an increase in appeals moving through the years, and we've seen a trend to increasing appeals to the SMB level over the years. 2019, we actually saw a bit of a reduction from appeals, and into 2020 to date, we're seeing a reduction as well. Again, in a reval year, we typically see an increase in appeals because there's more board of revision activity to the SMB. But it's interesting to look at the stats and the number of appeals that we've been dealing with on a year-to-year basis at the Saskatchewan Municipal Board. As Myron mentioned, our goal in 2019 was to do 100,000 property reviews. And we were able to achieve that, although it was by a very, very close. We did 100,983. So that was our second year. 2018 was our first year in our plan to hit 100,000 properties. That year we hit 105,000. In 2019, we were able to achieve our goal by hitting just over the 100,000 properties. So that was 2 years in a row. And if we look at some of our property reviews over time, as Erwin mentioned, we were hardly able to do 50,000 property reviews back in the 2013, 2014 timeframe when we reset our vision and wanted to go to 100,000 property reviews in 2018 so we could start picking up the lost revenue that was on the table. And as you can see, we achieved our goal in 2018 and 2019 based on how many reviews we did do. Our 2019 reinspections that we did, that we were to be going on the rolls in 2020, we did 68,923 properties. And the way we make up to get to the 100,000, we would add our annual maintenance in on that. But if we're just looking at reinspection properties, we did 30,000 ag properties and 21 RMs, 800 commercial properties, 16,000 res. Industrial, we did 1,000 oil and gas, and we did a flow line review of 19,000 properties. So had a really good year in 2019 on the reinspection front. Our planned 2020 reinspections that we've been working on this year for use in 2021, anticipating 85,000 properties. Plus, when you add in the maintenance, we're targeting 110,000 property reviews this year. Agricultural, we're working in 24 RMs in 2020. About 1,800 commercial, 22,000 residential, 900 oil and gas, and then a flow lang and tank review of 18,000 properties. So that's what we're currently working on in 2020 to implement on our roles in 2021. So just looking at some a bar graph of the inspections that were done in 2017, 18, 19, and 20, and you can see the trend as we've been moving our counts up in terms of eye on the goal of doing more property inspections and achieving our goal in 2018, 2019. And when you add the maintenance inspections into that, how we're achieving our 100,000 or 110,000 now as we move forward. 2020 maintenance, 85% of our clients received their maintenance by the requested delivery date. And that's a metric because a few years ago, we fell behind in our maintenance delivery, and we wanted to make sure that we get our maintenance out to when our clients need it. And we put a definite focus on that in 2020, and we're able to get 85% of our clients their maintenance by their requested date. And 95% of our clients received their maintenance within 3 weeks of their requested date. The 2020 roll status. 53 roles have been closed in the province. 1 role was open, and there were 5 roles not yet open. So we're getting to the end of the roles being open in the province for 2020. And we'll start all over again in 2021 with the reval, with new numbers for all properties in the province. Our 2021 maintenance is something we're already working on, and that's when municipalities supply us that list of things that have changed over the year, new construction, changes, demolitions, and that's something we're working on already. We've also negotiated 109 service charters with some of our municipalities, where we actually negotiate our deadlines of when we'll deliver our maintenance. And our goal is to deliver the maintenance by the date that our clients ask for it. And that's why we ask for the date you want your maintenance package, and we try to get it to you by that date. We did a client survey in 2019, and this wasn't our first survey, and we started doing surveys back in 2009. And then you can see the years 2011, 13, 15, 17. We do them every 2 years, and it's quite simple. We just want to answer the question, like, how are we doing? If you don't ask your clients how you're doing, you don't really know. You can assume that you know, but you may not be hitting what's actually happening out there. So we sampled 108 administrators, and we asked them a variety of questions, and we keep the questions similar from survey to survey, so we can measure if we're getting better client satisfaction or poorer client satisfaction. And some of the results when we talk about customer service, and this is just a graph to show over the years when we've done these surveys. And first of all, agreement on positive statements regarding customer service. It increased in 2019 from our 2017. 2017, we took a bit of a hit. It was a reval year, and we delivered our numbers later, and that showed in our client survey results. And we were able to bring that back up in 2019. Overall service satisfaction moving from, through the years from 96 up to a 99% satisfaction level in 2019. And if we look at it on a 4-point scale, we actually achieved our highest rating in 2019 on an overall service satisfaction at a level of 3.79 out of 4. Maintenance satisfaction overall, again in 2017, we had a dip because of the reval being late, and that got our maintenance numbers out late. So we dropped to 83% that year. We were able to bring it up in 2019 to 91%. So doing a better job on maintenance based on what our clients are telling us. And would you recommend SAMA? Those are questions we asked. And of course, our lowest rating was back in 2009 at 88%. We were at 100% in 2015, dipped to 95 in 2017, and then up to 97 in 2019. So overall, just finding out what our clients are feeling about our service. And there's always room to improve, and we get direct comments back, which is things that we take very seriously and work on with our clients to improve our service. The revaluation that's coming up, the market analysis for the January 1st, 2019 base date. We've been busy working on that for about a year and a half. We created the 21 database and updated the values based on that converted data and that base date. And we provided the preliminary values to government on March 31st, 2020, so they could start working on their provincial tax policy. And that's a date in legislation. They need those numbers by April 1st, so we were able to deliver that on time this year. We also have started delivering preliminary values to our clients, and we started at the end of July. We had about 57% of our numbers out to our clients. As of September 5th, 67%. As of last week, about 82%. There's a few municipalities we're still doing some tweaking on our apartments and our income values in some of our larger cities, and we're targeting getting the numbers out probably by the end of the first week in November into the middle of November, so that councils have a time to look at those numbers. And ideally, we want you to look at the numbers, provide feedback to us, and we're happy to meet with you or do virtual meetings to discuss the values as required. We're awaiting, as Erwin mentioned, provincial percentages of value from government relations. Once we get those percentages of value, we'll recalculate our entire database. We'll validate the 2021 values. Then we'll be sending those 2021 values out to our client municipalities in the January timeframe. Any maintenance that's not completed at that time will be provided in a separate package, and we'll continue to work on maintenance, and we'll finalize our maintenance and we'll deliver, and then the 2021 rolls can be prepared and we'll start the process all over again. Some information sources. SAMA's website has a wealth of information. www.sama.sk.ca. There's online manuals, handbooks, FAQs. There's pamphlets and fact sheets. There's also a good video on property assessment there. And then links to our SAMAview website that Erwin talked about, where you can find out information about any of the properties in our jurisdictions in the province. So with that, that is my report. And I'd like to call up Matthew Ratch to do a review of SAMA's 2019 audit financial statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd, and good afternoon, everyone. I am here to do a report on SAMA's financial situation for 2019 and also give a look at the present and the future as well. All the details of the financial statements for 2019 are included in SAMA's annual report. They're on pages 38 to 52. There's 15 pages there, so I won't be going through that. I will just do a quick overview and summary of what occurred in 2019. A bit of a background information. SAMA does operate on the calendar year of January 1 to December 31st, and SAMA is classed as a not-for-profit enterprise, which means that we follow the Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. On the revenue side, SAMA has mainly two large funding partners. The first of which is the province. The province pays for all governance functions of SAMA. And the government also, the province, pays for a proportional amount of our assessment services function. And that is in recognition that the province collects education taxes based on that assessment data. And we received from the province in 2019, rounded to $11.4 million. Municipalities pay for assessment services, their share of that division. And the revenue from municipalities in 2019 was $8.7 million. Both of these were budgeted for a 2% increase in 2019. We did capture that through the municipal requisition, and the province actually, the funding increased more than that with $850,000 increase from 2018 to 2019. Of the other revenue, the $991,000, approximately 2/3 of that is for SAMA's assessment services contract with the city of Moose Jaw. On the expenses side of the ledger for SAMA, we are a professional service, and as such, most of our costs relate to salaries and benefits. Approximately $14.5 million of our costs, of the money spent in 2019, went for our 163.25 full-time permanent staff, as well as summer students and temporary staff. The second largest category for our expenses relates to our IT costs of approximately $1.6 million in 2019. This can be allocated almost equally between three major categories. The first being our govern system. The large CAMA system is about 1/3 of that. Another 1/3 is for our servers and other outsourced IT services. And the final 1/3 is for desktop and all other smaller categories of IT services and software. The final $4 million includes all other costs, and approximately half of that is for our office rent for our 8 locations plus our central office, and for travel, which is under $1 million a year, but our third largest category. At the end of 2019, after SAMA had revenue of approximately $21 million and expenses of approximately $20.3 million, and then a net reserves allocation of about $800,000, our unrestricted surplus was $147,000. Our audits are conducted by Deloitte, who was awarded a 5-year contract through a public tendering process. They do our audits every year in February, and I'm pleased to let you know, as you'll see in the annual report, they gave SAMA a clean audit opinion to say that our statements were free of material misstatement or error in their opinion. The largest change from budget in 2019 was previously mentioned, the $850,000 received from the province. That was given to SAMA and targeted to increase our inspection capacity, and it was used to add new positions in the assessment services function. Outside of that, as mentioned, almost all of our revenues expenses followed along and matched very closely with the budget that was set out the year before. In 2020, we are currently in the 2018 to 2021 4-year planning cycle. And throughout that, when we set this plan back in 2017, we were looking at an increase of about 2% per year in both revenues and expenditures. This was based on an outlook looking at the consumer price index, and it has looked like it has followed very close to that. The consumer price index has been right at the 2% or just below it on average during that time. And in 2020, the municipalities received a 2% increase to their base charges on their requisition, and it was requested from the province, but provincial funding remained exactly the same in 2020 as received in 2019. And this 4-year plan did not count to change anything in our staffing count, but we did add positions due to that increased provincial funding last year. And to date, as we are already in October, we are anticipating approximately a break-even year for SAMA with no large change to the accumulated surplus at year end. Looking at next year and beyond, our budget that was approved by our stakeholders earlier this year calls for a 2% increase again to the requisition base for municipalities, as well as a 2% to the grant from the province. This matches up with our largest cost category, that being wages and benefits. As Erwin had mentioned, a collective bargaining agreement was agreed upon last year, and that calls for an increase to salaries of 1.7% in 2021, and also a 0.3% increase to the employer contribution for pensions. So we do expect salaries and benefits to also be rising at about 2% for next year. The next 4-year plan will be starting to be developed in early 2021. And again, that will be for the 2022 to 2025 period. And that is will be done in consultation with the board as well as stakeholders. My final slide is just to give some context for the costs of SAMA's services. Not only do we want to be doing a good job of providing our assessment services, as it states in our mission, we must do this cost effectively. And this graph shows a chart from the Canadian Property Assessment Network. Due to confidentiality, we can't reveal the specific provinces and cities named here, but it is made up of members of CPAN and major assessment jurisdictions in Canada. All of the members are included in this chart. As you can see, where SAMA is in the green, we are the lowest cost provider in Canada. To give a bit more information, the high number of agricultural properties in Saskatchewan does increase the cost a little bit, so we would expect to be the lowest. But other comparable provinces such as Manitoba are included on here, and as you can see, SAMA is the lowest cost provider in Canada. With that, I will now turn the meeting back over to our CEO, Erwin Blank, who will lead us in the question and answer portion.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for that review. So I assume some questions have been coming through as the presentations have been moving forward. So we'll do a little bit of a transition here to get the questions that are loaded in Q&A loaded up, and then we'll start to respond. Yes, we have one that came in prior to the meeting, and that was one that, do you have that right here? If you want to read the exact one? You don't, okay, that's okay. That one came from actually one of our longtime advisory committee members and a parks member. And the question was that in terms of campground assessments, so these are our campgrounds located around lakes in Saskatchewan or around parks and the like. The question was, SAMA, why don't you guys consider applying the income approach to valuation to value those campground facilities? Right now, when we assess a campground around a lake that are with stalls for rent, what we do is we assess the land on the basis of the comparable sales methods. So we'll say we're assessing it as commercial property. So what is other commercial land of this size and with these features in this general location selling for? And we'll put a similar assessment on those commercial those sites, the campground sites. We also add for development costs. So if there's additional water and services and infrastructure built on the site, we actually will add the costs of development for that to the vacant land value. And in addition to that, if there's any improvements on the site, buildings of any type, we will assess those, again, the same as buildings anywhere else in that municipality, and we will establish the value on the basis of the combined value of the land-based improvements and the building improvements. Now that has been across the province, the generally accepted process for valuing those kind of sites. It is possible to apply the income approach, but to do that, we would require a substantial amount of property income and expense information that we would have to collect from each of the individual property owners. It's not just a matter of collecting the revenue and then turning that into an estimated value. You also need to have a sense of what the various expenses are for each campground, because there's a lot of variability from one campground to another. So you need a sense of what all the management fees are associated with it, if they've got extra facilities that are tied to the property, you know, what the overall costs to maintain those are, and so that in the end you can get a income that is due specifically to the value of that land. And in those cases, you can capitalize that. If you look at sales of similar properties, you can capitalize that into a value. In order to move forward on that, we would need a broad-based consensus from our stakeholders to say, SAMA, we support you guys going forward and collecting this income and expense information. It can be an expensive undertaking to do it, but we likely would only be successful if all of our stakeholders would say, yes, we want you to go forward and do that. And if people aren't responding, take the necessary steps to ensure that you get that information. If you need to, to use legal means to do that, do so. So what I would say to Gary on this one, who I think brought in that, is if Parks would like to see that brought forward, please bring a recommendation forward to the advisory committees through one of your members that sit on our advisory committees, and we will be happy to debate that with the group and determine the level of support there is for moving forward to use the income approach for those campground areas. Okay, that was question one. Now, a question came in, and I don't know if I should be reading the people who've asked the question. It's probably not as relevant, but it's during the pandemic, how will assessment appeal hearings be held when an agreement to adjust is not possible? There are actually assessment appeal hearings that are going on right now, and they have been going on already for the last number of weeks and months as different tribunals have adjusted. There are different ways to handle those. You can still have an on-site hearing with proper physical distancing and sanitation protocols being followed. Or you can have a virtual hearing. There's nothing stopping a Board of Revision and Legislation from setting up virtual hearings. And I know our provincial board, the Sask Municipal Board, does that as one of their options. So there is ways to use Teams, to use Zoom, just as the technology we're using for this meeting, to establish and hold your Board of Revision, or to just meet in a larger room where everyone ensures that they're physically distant and masked up as necessary. To ensure that that hearings on site could potentially continue to occur. Another question, when you talk about inspections, does the total annual number include in-office inspections and those maintenance changes due to a change of class or a change of owner? Or are all of these inspections done in person that you are based your annual numbers on? No, the inspections are based on a combination of approaches that we follow we try to use the most effective approach to get accurate information for property. So this would be the total of all of those types of inspections. What those numbers don't include is, for example, for oil and gas wells, we get a series of renditions that are reported by companies to us, thousands of them each year, and we will enter that information into our system as the companies reported it, and we'll validate where there's any question about that. Those thousands of renditions we wouldn't include, but any of the regular maintenance or inspections we do, whether we're doing them, some of them we can do from the office and only ground truth selected ones, those are all included as part of that total count. And again, we want to make sure we use the approach that will give us accurate values done as efficiently as possible. And that takes me to the end of the open questions. So that may take us right up to the wrap up. I want to thank all of you for joining. Oh, there is another one. Okay, hey, here we go. How far back is there access to prior year's assessment information on SAMAView? The new version of SAMAView will allow you to look at the previous year and the current assessment year. So today, if you looked at SAMAView, you would be able to access your 2020 assessment and your 2019 assessment. Next year, it'll be the 2021 assessment and the 2020 assessment. So we give a 1-year look back period. And unless anybody's madly typing, and do we have any hands raised for anyone that wanted to actually get piped in to ask a question verbally? No? Okay. Well, that sounds like a wrap for us. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. Myron is going to bring some closing comments for us, and that will take us to the end of the annual meeting. Thank you for your attention.
Well, yeah, it looks like our meeting has pretty well come to an end. And hopefully this format worked for everyone. I guess it looked good in here in our room. I guess we don't know until we hear from you how it went at your end. I believe, Peter, you said there was going to be a survey going out. We will be sending out a survey to everyone just to get you let us know how this worked for you and how, did the good, the bad, the ugly about it. How, going forward from this, is this possibly a way that we can get more people into our AGMs? Maybe something like this or a hybrid of this. Let us know what you think anyway when that survey comes out. We'd sure appreciate it if you took the time to do that. I'd just like to say thank you to a few people, individuals and organizations. And first of all, our executive and staff for all the work they've done this year. Everybody in SAMA really pulled together. There was some difficult times, I'll tell you, with COVID the way it is, and people having all kinds of extra problems at home with, the kids not being in school and all these different things. It really was, they did a fantastic job, I felt, keeping up with everything. And it looks like we're going to be right on target with our projections for this year. So a big thank you to them. And of course, a thank you to our board of directors. They're always there when you need them. And it's always been a real pleasure to work with all of them. And to our advisory committees, thank you. I know you've been on a bit of a holiday here from since last year, but we're going to be putting you back to work here pretty soon. We're hoping to have a format set up for our November advisory meetings, and shortly here we'll be letting you know how that's all going to work, and hopefully we'll get a process that'll work just fine for that. So we'll be letting you know on that where we go, but we do thank you anyway for all of your help over the years on the advisory committees. And of course there's SARM, municipalities of Saskatchewan and the province, and thank you for all your financial support and your patience with us as we transfer into this new system that hopefully is going to be better and more efficient for everybody at the end of the day. And especially thank you to all of you for being here. We wouldn't be here if you weren't here. And like I said, we would certainly like to hear your input into the meeting, and we're looking forward to that. So thank you again, and everyone, please stay safe. And here's hoping the next year is a little better year in general than this one was. So thank you very much.